Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joe from Longway Planetarium, and today we're going to be talking about moon phases. Now, the moon is one of the easiest things for us to spot in the sky. In any given night you may go out, look up in the sky, and see the moon before you start looking for any constellations or planets. However, if you wait a few nights, you may notice the moon is completely different than the way you saw it before. So we're going to be discussing why the moon is changing its shape and why it's changing its position. Now, we're going to start with position because our moon actually moves pretty fast from night to night. Our moon is orbiting around the Earth, and as it's orbiting around the Earth, it's constantly changing its position, and this is all happening within a month, a little under about 29 and a half days. Because it's constantly moving from night to night, you're going to see it in different areas of the sky. Now, this is pretty fast. It's going to move again faster than any of the planets we see, but you may notice even if you track its movement, its appearance will change as well. So its appearance is all due to the way the sun is shining off the moon. So at any given night, we may get a little bit of sunlight bouncing off the moon. We may get a lot of sunlight bouncing off the moon. We're actually going to start with one of the easiest phases for us to spot in the sky. We're going to start with full moon. Now, full moon is when the moon is on the dark side of the Earth. So you're going to see it late at night, and we get the most sunlight bouncing off of it. So in this diagram, the Earth is in between the moon and the sun. Now, this isn't an eclipse. That's a different subject altogether. However, at this point, we have more than enough sunlight bouncing off the moon for us to spot it easily. As the moon continues in its orbit around Earth, however, we get less and less light bouncing directly at us. So when we enter what's called the third quarter phase, seems a little out of order, but when we enter the third quarter phase, we get about half the moon's light bouncing off of us. Now, you can see we still have a little bit of sunlight bouncing off the moon, but we also have that shadowy part of the moon. This is actually where we can't see any of the moon's surface because there isn't any light shining on it. As the moon continues transitioning around us, as it continues orbiting around the Earth, we eventually go to what's called new moon. Now, new moon is one of the harder phases for us to spot because in new moon, none of the light is bouncing off the moon. It's all coming back to the sun. And so because of that, we get this big dark area in the sky. Normally, we don't try to worry too much about finding new moon because that's when the moon is going to be closest to the sun in our sky, and we don't want to look directly at the sun. Now, luckily for us, if we are really wanting to catch that moon, we don't have to wait too long. It'll start transitioning from new moon into that thin crescent moon, and it'll go back to what we call the first quarter phase. Now, one thing to note about first quarter phase, you'll notice it looks a lot like third quarter, but it's the other side of the moon lit up. So the shadow is actually on the other side of the moon. Now we're seeing the other half of the moon lit up by the sun. So we can actually bounce between third quarter and first quarter. Here we have first quarter. Here we have third quarter. So you notice we can see two different halves of the moon. That's because we're only seeing half of that moon being lit up by the sun. Now luckily, these phases move pretty fast. As I mentioned before, it's only about a month to go from new moon all the way to full moon, and then back to new moon again. So if for some reason you're really wanting to catch the moon in a certain phase, you won't have to wait too long. Now we're going to be going over how to find these phases throughout the month in a later video, but on behalf of Longway, I want to thank you for joining us for this informational video about moon phases. Stay tuned, we'll be talking a little bit about what you can see in the sky coming up in the following months.